Happy to turn it over to Lama Rod.
Well, thank you, Eric, as a fellow queer theater kid as well.
Woo!
A theater kid, by the way, not like Eric, I wasn't good at theater. I just showed up.
False. This is false.
I was like, I'm here because I just want to like be on stage and sing and act and perform and put on costumes and be gay with all the other weird kids, because that's where all the weird kids ended. All the super like aggressive kids were there as well. They're just like, I'm gonna be an actor. It was like real, like intense, but I was just like, yeah, musical musical theater was a lifesaver for me. Music is in general, as you know, if you come to anything that I do, like there's music always, right? But yeah, well, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Karen, who's behind the scenes working tech hosting, and thank you all for coming, being here. Welcome to those of you who are new. This is indeed Medicine Buddha. We will hopefully mention something about Medicine Buddha at some point tonight in a practice. Don't worry, it's like we're gonna get there. This is all about healing, right? You don't just have to show up and just chant, and just sit still and quiet in front of your screen, and call it a practice. It can be a little more engaged, right? We can be a little more about, I don't know, the world and culture and society. I'm a society girl, right? I like to be out and about, right? And I'm also about getting free. Thank you to the Durham team for this shirt. I really love this. It reminds me that what I'm trying to do is get free. And welcome to those of you who have been coming for a bit. It's always good to see you. And again, I'm Lama Rod. I use he, him pronouns. I'm here on the ancestral lands of the Creek, Muskogee, and Cherokee people and community, the community that's still here as well, caretaking this land. And I'm just deeply honored and grateful to be offered permission to be on this land, to steward the land at the best of my capacity as well. So deep gratitude to the land. Please offer deep gratitude to the lands that you're living and practicing on right now, as well. Deep gratitude to our plant siblings as well. Um, I don't know, this is something just kind of popped up just in the past couple seconds, but I want to offer gratitude to complexity as well. Um, I don't know, offering just like there's something so liberatory about holding the intensity of complexity right now. Not necessarily reacting to everything, but holding it. Um, yeah, I'm just deeply grateful to be in this moment, right? And I know some of you may have an opposite opinion as to you being here in this moment, in the world, in this body. But I am grateful to be here. Um, I know in many ways that I have chosen to be here in this moment, and some of you have as well. I would even wager something to say that over half of this group, if not most, right? I know you can't fathom that, right? But I do think that if we are here practicing now in this moment of apocalypse, of collapse, which I think is also about a returning back to indigeneity, right? If we're here practicing consciously, choosing practice, and when we choose practice, we're saying yes, right, to the intensity of this moment. We're riding this intensity. We're choosing to consume it instead of that intensity consuming us. And we're actually intentionally trying to embody love and compassion and care and equanimity and kindness, right? and still being fierce, right? If you're like attempting to do that, I think I think you may have chosen to be here. I, I think you're here in this life in this body because you knew that you could take this and you could do this right in this moment. So I offer that just to offer a different narrative as to counter the narratives of helplessness or victimhood that many of us, including myself, right, sometimes get lost in, right? That I am helpless. There's nothing that I can do to fight against this, to change what's happening. That I can that maybe I can need to just sit still and just let shit happen and just die, right? Um, I mean, that's not where I come from. That's not the people that I descend from, right? And sometimes we just need a new narrative, you know. Um, as I really, have been talking about the past couple of weeks, is that sometimes you have to be patient and wait for the cracks in the wall to appear, right? And what seems impenetrable and solid and hard, sometimes you just need a little time for the cracks to appear. And when the cracks appear, that's when you can start growing into the cracks, through the cracks, opening those cracks even larger, right? Um, the patience, right, is something that we have to hold on to, as well as holding on to each other, right? During this period, the storm, right? And knowing that you have so many resources at hand, if you can only ask and reach out. And that's been the foundation of so much of my teaching, is asking for help, right? When we ask for help, particularly when we're asking and sending prayers into like this Buddha realm, like that we pray to, the Buddha realm, the medicine Buddha resides, um, or when we send prayers into the Dharmakaya, and some of you joined me this weekend for our Mahamudra workshop, the Dharmakaya being the expression of emptiness itself, right? Our aspirations, our prayers, our deep intentions begin to shift. It begins to shape emptiness, right? It begins to shape the Sambhogakaya energy, which is the energy, the suchness of emptiness, right? That's a part of the expression of our consciousness. Our consciousness is an expression of the emptiness and the suchness, right? And when we start getting intentional about what we want to see, we start shaping the phenomenal world around those intentions. This is why we pray like we do. Prayer shapes the phenomenal world, right? So you can't give up on prayer. As I often say, like yeah, there should be action, but that action really needs to be preceded by prayer as spiritual people. And I just assume all of us are, if you're here, because this is way fucking woo-woo here. Right? This is all over the place. You're gonna have to be on this propaganda train to get with this, right? So I would just assume, that there's some spirituality here, right? Um, but no, this like if we take on this identity as a spiritual practitioner, we can still be everything else, right? We can still be activists. We can still be, whatever, right? But can we actually develop a deep trust in faith? Because, I'm sorry, a deep trust in prayer, aspirations, intentions, because they do really help to shape the phenomenal world. So we can't give up on our prayers, right? And this is why this space is really important as well, because we're practicing prayer together, communally, collectively. And this is one of the ways that I am consuming the chaos, by remembering that I have a capacity to shape, the phenomenal world because fuck, everyone else is shaping it. You know, a whole bunch of people are shaping the phenomenal world in a way that seems quite totalitarian and authoritative and fascist right now, right? You know, and that's those have been prayers as well, prayers in action. Prayer is neither good or bad, prayer just is, right? You can pray for benefit as much as you can pray for harm, right? Matter of fact, in many magic systems, that's really the nature of prayer, like to protect, to harm, to benefit, when it doesn't matter, to heal. Like prayer is about helping us get something done, to shape something, right? And so we have to be intentional about using our prayers to shape a more liberated future, and we can't give up on those prayers, no matter how useless it seems, and pointless and boring, and how performative it may seem, right? And we'll cut through, you know, if you're feeling that praying is performative, we'll cut through to another layer of practice with this, right? But just keep doing it, right? And then allow the prayers to open up possibilities, potential. Yeah, you may not see a way out of this, but keep praying. Now I'm sounding like my mom. You know? Um, which you can catch her sermons on Facebook Live every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as well, because she's a minister. If you don't know that, you know, she's a minister, retired minister, but still preaching. You know? So tonight, you know, I wanted to open with, of course, Defying Gravity from the new movie musical Wicked, based upon the Broadway play, of course, based upon the series of books before the musical. And of course, yeah, you know, Wicked isn't my favorite musical, you know, but it has still been a really important musical for me for a long time since it premiered, I guess 2003. It's been over 20 years now. And Defying Gravity, particularly. Now, when I first started teaching, I started out teaching after I finished 3-year retreat. I started out in DC. One or two of you may be from those DC years in the room. And Defying Gravity, you know, this song was something that, you know, I'd been moved by, you know, for a while and would just start teaching on it. Very much in the same way that I would go on and on and on about the Matrix, right? Which, you know, some of you love, but that was a different age in the history of medicine Buddha practice. By the way, me talking about a musical isn't extraordinary. It is not. But I would talk about Defying Gravity. And honestly, I don't think anyone knows this, but my thinking about goodness actually is rooted in Wicked. When I was really in the musical, studying the musical in my early years of teaching, and was really interested in Glinda, actually, and her relationship to goodness and virtue, and what that looked like for her and her character development throughout the play. Now, I'm also know that some of you, you know, don't know Wicked and so forth, but it's the Wizard of Oz, but it's from the perspective of Alphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, and Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. I think she's the Good Witch of the South, cardinal witches, right? So it's about their meeting in magic school, right? And them becoming friends, and Alphaba being this really talented, powerful student, being invited to see the wizard. And so the song Defying Gravity is right after they realize that the wizard is a fake. You know, the wizard is a totalitarian fascist like ruler of Oz, who's faking it as he makes it, right? And so, but Alphaba is the strongest, like witch ever, it seems like in the storyline, the plot. And so she's beginning to realize that, and she's like, listen, like we don't need this wizard. Like we need to like topple the patriarchy. we we need to like topple like this fascist regime, right? And I have the power. It sounds familiar. I wonder like how many of our great change leaders and change makers have said the same thing, you know? But she was like, to Glinda, as you've heard from the song, it's like, let's do this. Like, I got the magic, I got the broom, let's split, let's take this over, and then Glinda's like, no, I don't know, you know, I don't know. I think there's a way for us to reform the system from inside. Right? And so Glinda becomes the reformist, while Alphaba takes on this role as the revolutionary, right? But the friendship is still there, the love is still there, but there's a heartbreak. There's a deep disappointment because they're choosing different paths. This is when they say, right, I hope you're happy, you know, with this choice that you're making. And you know, it's it's a lot of doubt because both of them are saying, I know you're making the wrong choice. You know, like you're making the wrong choice pointing at each other, but they're like, but I still love you. And I hope that like this works out for you in the end, which is a statement that a lot of people are using right now. It's like, I hope you get what you deserve right now, right? Which is a little mean to say that to people, but I think that's what they were saying in that scene, right? So Alphaba, even though she's connected to this power, has a lot of doubts still. And those doubts, of course, are about fear. She's having to let go of her best friend. She's having to, for the first time in her life, practice this intense kind of agency that is attempting to be policed and is being villainized, right, by the establishment, which Glinda is now a part of, right? Um, and so they're in this huge tower, and you don't see this necessarily. Well, the musical stages this very differently than the movie, which I actually really like the movie's production of this, where in the movie, Alphaba, um, well, in the play, Alphaba, like crashes out of the tower just roaring, you know, like instantly. When she decides I'm going to do this, she's flying. But in the movie, which is what I love about the movie, she actually jumps out of the tower, but she's not quite realized yet. So she's falling out of the tower, and the broom, which is a part of her power because she just enchanted it, like she can't grab the broom, not necessarily because it's out of her reach, but because she hasn't developed the agency, the courage to say yes. Oh, I think you're getting ahead of where I'm going. Like she hasn't said yes yet to this power, like to what she is becoming, right? And as she's falling in the scene, she's going through all of this emotional labor, which is her work of consuming the fear that's keeping her from this final awakening, right? And when she calms down, right, and settles, and all this is happening when she's falling. So like, I don't know how realistic all of that is, right? But like, it's a movie happening in Oz. But like I promise you, if you're falling out of a big tower and you come to that kind of stillness, you are the teacher now. Right? Um, but she gets into the stillness, she overcomes the fear, and the broom comes to her. And then that's that final like that rip where she's just like, you know. No one can defy me, you know, if you're looking for me, look to the western sky, right? And then that note at the end, that every theater kid is practicing right now and has been practicing for over 20 years. This is a real hard note to manage. Um, and 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 this is what I like about the film adaptation here, because you hear that huge, that intense that deep inhale, like, which is usually scrubbed out in musicals, movie musicals, to make it a little clean. But you hear her like, like that big inhale, and then that release, right? And for me, that's extremely symbolic because that's the roar. When you say, fuck it, I'm gonna get free, that's the roar that happens. Right. And she was roaring. This is why people are so emotional, because that roar is on behalf of all of us who ourselves in this moment are feeling extremely helpless. Right. And she is roaring. She's doing, as I often say, like I've done this work in Love and Rage, where when we see people or characters doing that kind of labor, they're doing that labor for us. Right? They're reminding us that we have the same capacity to choose freedom and to roar, right? And to throw all these projections that people are placing on her back, completely cut through them, right? Where she's saying, like, fuck it. You know, if you want me, come and get me. you know, and that's this ultimate kind of like positioning of freedom when you're like, I have nothing left to lose, right? And the only way you're going to get me is for you to make the same choice, and you're not, right? So if you ever need me, I'm going to be over here, like in the West. How she knew it was the Western sky, I don't know. I don't know if she had an Apple Watch or something, because I don't have that intuitive nature to figure out a direction. You know, but this is why I wanted to like bring us our attention to for our practice tonight and for our contemplation, right? Is like, again, this theme that I keep coming back to is like, have you chosen this freedom yet? Right? Have you like said yes to getting free? Have you consented to this? Because nothing's going to happen until you consent. Right. There was no flight for Alphaba until she surrendered completely. Right. So much of this stage and like this pre-stage of like choosing freedom is this work of surrendering, right? Letting go. That surrendering is really an expression of faith, right? If I surrender, I will be caught, right? You may not have a lot of proof that anything's on the other side of that consent, right? And then, therefore, there's the fear that keeps us from choosing that, consenting, right? Because what's going to catch me once I let go of all of my resistance, all of my fear, all of my narratives, once I like let go of everything that I'm holding on to, like what's on the other side of this, right? And it's the fear that arises as a barrier, right? The fear, the intense anxiety. The fear is really about living in the future, right? That barrier, right? That keeps many of us from making the choices that we need to make right now, right? And so I want to think about fear tonight, the consumption of fear, the eating of fear, that consumption of fear as this experience of healing, right? Because not only is there fear, there's also the fear of healing itself, right? Because if we heal, then we have to let go of the person we used to be, right? And I think that was the major character transition for Alphaba in this plot, right? It's like I have to let go of who I thought I was because it is no longer appropriate, right? It is actually keeping me back from actually experiencing liberation, right? Like we have to understand at some point that sometimes our present understanding of ourselves is so limited, right? It can't hold the intensity of real liberation, which actually is really like great for some of you because you're like, well, if I don't choose freedom, then I'm not responsible for shit. You know, I won't get blamed for anything. Like I won't be seen. I'm gonna stay hidden. And the way Alphaba was, right? It's like I don't have to like take responsibility for anything. I can just have a nice, peaceful life if I can just stay away from choosing this, right? But as I've often said, we're not here to be comfortable. We're not here to get acclimated. Like we're not here, to find, an easier, prettier, or more demure and more mindful way of suffering. You see how I did that? You see how I am exhibiting hipness, and irrelevance by referring to social media trends, take notes. Right? And that's getting in our way, right? And I think that's, how I got into Glenda, the character of Glenda, early on was like, oh, like you're like just performing goodness. Like this is your stick. It's goodness. You have to be pretty. You have to be well dressed. Like you have to be liked. You have to be popular. Popular is a really good song in the musical too. Actually, take a listen. Um, like I am trying to fulfill everyone's expectations of me, right? I am trying to be liked, right? And it may be very survival based, right? Because maybe that's how she survives, as many of us do when we make those choices to perform, like being agreeable. Like I always say, it's a performance of being agreeable, like and accommodating. Like that's how we survive. That's how we get the resources that we need, which is also an embodiment of conditional love, conditional care, opposed to unconditional love, which is about freedom. Conditional love is about control and restriction. And we take on like that embodiment of conditional love because that's the way that we get the things that we need, right? That's how we survive, right? And so Galinda has to make a choice in a way Alphaba has to make a choice. Am I going to stop being agreeable or am I going to be myself? Right. And I do not think in the play, in the musical, that Glinda ever got there. Right. As someone who is just like Team Alphaba, right? You know, like I'll take the revolutionary for 100, Alex. Um, but how do you, and this is from my early teachings on Wicked, right? Like, how do you earn goodness? Right. And that's where all of this stuff around goodness came from, is from this character, Glinda. Like, how do you earn your goodness? Right. And from goodness, how does goodness become virtue? Right. And Alphaba is doing that as well. Like she said yes to freedom, and in turn, earning virtue, like it is virtue in the sense, meaning that like virtue is how we naturally begin to reduce harm, suffering, violence for ourselves and for others, right? virtue is this way, this natural way that we begin to be a benefit naturally, right? Because over and over and over again, right, we've chosen goodness and what seems to be a benefit, but goodness is, well, goodness evolves into virtue when we understand that, like, this isn't just a performance, like, this has to be what we are. Like, we have to be about the reduction of harm and violence, right? We have to be about love and compassion, right? Not performing, but being, becoming, right? And so when we become virtuous, it doesn't mean that we become meek and mild, right? That's not, I know some very virtuous people who are like just like difficult. They're just difficult. That's a nice way to put it, actually. I'm being very mindful. Like, I have known some extremely compassionate, amazing, fierce people who are also very difficult people to be around at the same time, right? Um, but they would do anything for you, right? Um, so this goodness, right? This goodness and virtue, again, tied directly to liberation, right? To get free, freedom and virtue are expressions of each other, right? Because freedom, liberation is the highest, most profound expression of love. To get free, to help others get free, to get yourself free is the highest expression of love. Right? And so, yeah, this is a tricky period, right? Um, and this is calling us to get real, right? About what we're choosing and how we're choosing to be. Or are we ready to die? Which is to say, are you ready to let the things that no longer serve you die, including identities, right? Um, I think sometimes I'll just say for me, I'll just say, make this very personal. I grew up romanticizing liberation struggle and freedom, right? It seems so easy and glamorous, reading everyone from Toussaint Louverture to Assata Shakur, Angela Davis, you name them, Malcolm X, um, Harriet Tubman, like growing up and having this idea, oh, this is really easy, you know? And I think what's tricky for us now is that we want our liberation struggle. Let me rephrase that. Um, let me step it back a little bit. When I was talking about like these great change makers, right? Um, Another thing that I noticed was like, oh, like their choices looked a certain way. Their choices looked very public, right? And their choices cost a lot, you know. Um, and sometimes we think our liberation struggle has to mirror someone else's liberation struggle, and it doesn't, right? And sometimes our choices aren't as glamorous and public. They can be quite private and personal, right? And this is the level of choice I'm talking about, the private, personal, individual choice that you have to make, right? Before you even get to making possibly a more public choice, right? Doing a public action. that signifies your right to be free, like many of these great change agents, leading movements, escaping the country, all this stuff, right? But it's this personal, individual, very like subtle, nuanced choice that I'm trying to get us into, and have been for a while, right? I think the trouble here is around fear, right? And how do we consume that fear, eat that fear? How do we tend to the fear, right? That's keeping us from making a real choice, because you will be limited until you move past the fear and choose real liberation, right? I don't feel limited anymore. I feel often limited physically by my body, right? Absolutely, as we all do. The impermanence of body, absolutely, right? Um, but mentally, spiritually, I don't feel limited anymore because of this practice, right? You know, so when I hear defying gravity, and particularly when they sing, "We're unlimited," together we're unlimited. Like I tear up with that, right? Because it's not just about me; it's about like being in community and say, together, if we can just get together, like we're unstoppable, right? And then when Alphaba sings, when she's made that first choice to say, you know what, I'm gonna like fuck this up, right? And she says there's a change, there's a change deep within me. There's something that's not the same. And you will know that. When you make this choice, you will know it. Like I am not the same person anymore. Right. And I felt that several times in my life, right? When I've like made choices, really these huge choices about my own liberation in this body as a Black queer fat man, also spiritually as someone who is taking responsibility for their realization, right? That even in this body, I am beginning to feel unlimited, right? And there's a change, right? And that change, when you make the choice and you feel the change, there's no going back, right? Because you're like, oh, what is this? Because this is what I have been working for. What is this change? There's a shift happening, right? And that's these old notions of self dying, these old restrictions, this old rigidity, these old carceral logics that have kept us bound and police begin to dissolve, right? And then what happens is this space that begins to open, right? And you're like, okay, what is this? Right? And that's where we have to get to. And I wanted to do this tonight, um, because I just think that I'm seeing too many people spiraling out now. They're not lifting, they're spiraling deeper into the density of the fear and the trauma and the overwhelm, right? And when you start doing that, there's definitely a way that you begin to weaponize that against others, against other people around you. Like you can start, and it takes on many different forms, right? You know, um, but so many people, and this is why I started talking about these change makers, because I think that so many of us want to embody our our heroes. And then we talk about this in Free Radicals, right? We want to embody our like inspirations. I want to be like Angela Davis. Like I want to be like James Baldwin. I talk about this all the time, right? Like I want to be like these great beings like Toni Morrison who could write, right? And break your heart in her writing, you know, or James Baldwin, who could write just to like express something that you have struggled to name your whole life, you know, or Angela Davis, right? Who was just like, listen, I'm not going to give up. You know, like I'm not going to give up, right? That will, like I want to be like that, but like when we get our work, like we don't want to do it. Like when we get the shit that we have to make decisions over, we don't want to do it. You know, that's too hard. Well, it was hard for everyone, right? This is too much. You're experiencing the same thing that every being who has found themselves in the same position has experienced, right? And then you say, but fuck it. Like, what else is there but this, choosing freedom, liberation, saying yes, letting go of all this fear and limitation, and saying, whatever happens, happens, right? Like, the only thing that I need in the future is my practice. As long as I have my practice, anything can happen, including death, and I'm okay, right? That's what happens when you say yes. You say even yes to death. Right? If I need to die, show me where my fucking grave is and let's get to the funeral rites. No? Like you that saying yes is also the realization that I'm more than this. You know, yes, my body is important, right? This moment is important. You're important. Being in the world is important. And at the same time, this isn't the whole picture. This isn't the whole truth. Like I am unlimited, right? Like there is, my mind, my nature, my consciousness, it is unlimited, right? And so when I am trapped in the liminal, the linear, the rigidity of the phenomenal world of the physical world, I have to keep turning my mind back to my unlimited nature, to the nature of my mind, which is the nature of all phenomena, right? Both of these have to happen. I need to be in the world, and I also need to keep my view stayed in this, the nature of everything, right? To call the nature of everything, the essence, emptiness, space, all of that into my embodiment in this world. That's what it means to awaken in the body, right? I'm not trying to transcend the phenomenal world. I'm trying to be here for it and know that like the phenomenal world does not have a right to create me and to shape me. And if the phenomenal world is shaping you in that way, then it's shaping you in rigidity, right? And we're not rigid, we're unlimited, fluid, open, spacious. No matter what is happening, no matter what kind of rigidity is facing us, like we hold on to the truth that we are unlimited. As individuals, we are unlimited. Together, we are unlimited, right? And this is what my ancestors have taught me. This is what my teachers have taught me. This is what emptiness, the ultimate teacher, has taught me. This is what medicine Buddha teaches me. This is what Tara teaches me, right? This is what some of you teach me as well. So let's start. You know, and by the way, we're gonna go an extra 30 minutes tonight. I forgot to say that at the top. Sorry, that's why this talk is so long. But if you need to leave at like 8:30 or 30 minutes, then we'll have much of the practice out of the way. I'm gonna leave 30 minutes for questions. at the end. So we'll move, we'll see how much time we have for questions. That's the goal. We will be done by 9 Eastern time. Because I start shutting down at 9. I really do. I'm like, where's the bed? Like, where's my cocktail? Where's the Golden Girls? Like, it's time for me to transition. um, so hopefully you got your prayer requests down. We're gonna do that as well. I'll offer those, right? Um, but beginning again, as we usually do, allow your body to come into a position that feels appropriate for you, be that comfortable, be that stable, balanced. Noticing the weight of your body, the seat rising to hold you. Again, touching the earth, connecting to the lands that you're practicing on. And then just returning to this aspiration that we always start with, which is the aspiration and the intention that we're practicing to get free and to help others get free, to get free from suffering, duality, to get free from fear. And none of this getting free necessarily means leaving things behind or erasing anything, but this freedom in this sense, particularly in this moment, is saying that like I want to disrupt my fixation and my self-identification with anything that keeps me from experiencing my unlimited awakened nature. To get free from fixation, but not freedom as erasing or bypassing. As I talk about in the New Saints, right? The New Saints is not necessarily fearless, but it is indeed full of fear. But that fear is being held, it's being tended to by awareness, by spaciousness. So we have this freedom to choose another experience, to choose courage or love as an expression of courage, to choose care, to choose fierceness. And even repeating to yourself, I am unlimited. I am unlimited. And together, we are unlimited, which is very similar to what we often say, I am the medicine. May we become the medicine. So I am unlimited. We are unlimited. I am the medicine. May we become the medicine. So just reciting that for yourself for just a minute before we continue. Just a few more seconds. And so when you're ready, in your mind, shifting your attention to the space around you. And I invite you to call into your space all of your benefactors, all the beings who love you, who want you to be free, including all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, all the spirits, deities, ancestors, any being both living and transitioned, all beings of light, the protectors and guardians of the lands and the elements, all these beings that want us to be free, that love us so deeply, we just invite them simply by saying, welcome. I invite and greet all the beings around me and connected to me who want me to be free. I welcome you into the space. And you can begin to imagine that they just begin to appear, right? All around you. And of course, as they appear, they're radiating this energy of care, profound, awakened care in the form of white light. And that light begins to slowly illuminate the space around you so that you begin to glow and radiate as well from their radiance. And connecting to this experience of being held and protected by this radiance, this energy. And we can even say to ourselves, I deserve to be held and protected and cared for. I deserve this. I do not have to be good enough to be cared for in this moment. Every being deserves to be cared for and loved in the way that you're being cared for and loved by your benefactors. A few more seconds here. So when you're ready, let's go a little further. And I invite you, as you're connecting to the support of your benefactors, feeling the seat under you, feeling the earth rising to hold you, so just feeling all of this support, I invite you now to call your fear into the space. Where's your fear at? If fear is arising as a physical sensation, where's that fear at? Often when I feel fear, it's right in my heart center. So it's very predictable. Sometimes I feel my fear somatically as just heaviness, tightness, little rapid heartbeat. It can feel like fatigue. It can be masked as anger or sadness. But we welcome the fear to be present. And we're noticing, naming it. There you are. And as this fear is awakening, we turn our attention to the first of our mantras, which is in a way kind of evoking or awakening the consciousness of Medicine Buddha. And as we chant this, we'll begin with a long and chanting the mantra 3 times, and then ending by chanting Om. But in the practice, I invite you to imagine that as we're beginning to chant, or as we're chanting, that Medicine Buddha begins to arise, to appear within the essence or within the heart of your fear. That in a way, Medicine Buddha is born from this fear, as liberation is always born from struggle, as the lotus is always emerging from the mud. Imagining that Medicine Buddha, in any way that you would like to imagine, Medicine Buddha begins to awaken in the heart of that fear, be it a sensation, be it energetic or mental, whatever your experience with fear is, allow Medicine Buddha to awaken within. So we begin. Oh. Vasange Hino Soha. Om Vasange Hino Soha. Vasange Hino Soa. Om. And as this medicine Buddha emerges from your heart center, or from the experience of fear itself, imagine that this awakened medicine Buddha is slowly consuming, dissolving this energy of fear, replacing this energy of fear with the light of healing, of deep compassion, which is the nature of medicine Buddha. Medicine Buddha's deepest intentions is for us to be free. So as we sit with our fear, we're also imagining that this fear is being consumed, metabolized by the presence of medicine Buddha. And as we move into our main mantra, Tea Taun Bacon Say Maha Bacon Say Rasa Sumongate Soha. Allow medicine Buddha in your mind to take you on a journey into the very nature of fear, or whatever journey medicine Buddha wants to take you on. And allowing this fear to be slowly transformed into clarity, into fierceness, into just this deep audacity to choose freedom. And so we begin with the mantra. O te naum begenze ma begenze razu sumungate soha. 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 Te 라즈 수문간체 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간체 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간에 소하 대하다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간에 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간에 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간체 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간에 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간에 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간체 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간체 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간에 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간에 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간체 소하 대한다 온비근세 비근세 마비근세 라즈 수문간체 소하. Just turning my attention to the prayer requests as always. Calling into, once again, calling the attention of all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yidams, Dharma protectors, to all beings of light, to all beings who want us to be free and safe and happy. I ask you to hold these prayers on our behalf to bring about what we most need to see for ourselves, for our beloved, for our beloveds and the world. We're offering prayers for Kathy and V in their transitions from this physical realm, and all of their beloveds. May they be surrounded with love, peace, and comfort. Prayers for Alicia, may she fully recover from breast cancer. Prayers for Colin and Sarah, may they have a successful IVF. Prayers for Dinah, who unexpectedly lost her brother yesterday. May she find comfort, peace, and support as she moves through grief. Offering prayers for all those who are pressed to experience safety, peace, and joy in times of great uncertainty. Offering prayers that I and all beings may be able to use the devastation of the present moment as an anchor into the living divinity. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering and be safe, peaceful, and at ease. May my daughter and I experience peace, joy, and love this holiday season. Offering prayers for my gender expansive friend R, who recently died. May their spirit be at peace, and may everyone impacted by their death feel resourced to grieve and mourn and feel supported by community and loved ones. For RR, who is in the hospital, may they receive skillful care and return to good health soon. For all gender expansive, queer, and BIPOC folks, and anyone impacted by genocide and systemic oppression and violence. Offering prayers that I can successfully stay strong in the face of seasonal depression. Offering prayers that I will find another healthy home with ease, and that I can trust that everything will work out for the best without me trying to control it. Offering prayers for John, who fell and broke his pelvis in 2 places and is flying home today from the hospital, and for his wife and family as they nurture him back to health. Offering prayers for the well-being of all. Offering prayers that I continue to learn about and understand how to set and maintain loving boundaries that serve me and those I'm in relationship with. May Eric let in inner peace, blessings for a dear comrade who has been diagnosed with inoperable cancer. Offering prayers for the new medicine I'm trying to work so I can use my hands with ease again. Prayers for all with chronic and complicated health issues and situations. I continue to pray for the liberation of all beings in all timelines and all realms. Prayers for all who are experiencing violence, including myself. Prayers that miracles are possible and that the perpetrators of violence are held accountable. Prayers that I have a safe home. Prayers that I get a break from all the intensity and suffering. Prayers of rest and health. Prayers that we are all held, that we all hold onto our humanity, as Mother Toni Morrison said. Ashe. May all of Roxy's, Sarah's, and Joni's friends dreams come true. Offering prayers for my sister as she begins the second round of treatment for multiple myeloma. Offering prayers for my sister that is having an unresolved issue with her arm. Offering prayers for Teddy to be healed and out of the hospital, and for Jamili as well. Offering prayers for the financial and health stability of my parents. May they ask for the help that they need. Prayers that Naharu Tabata may be reunited with those who love him. Prayers for Ali and her health and health of her unborn child. Offering prayers for all those hearts that are feeling deeply lonely. Prayers for peace in relationships. Praying for peace in relationships that are deeply changing, and prayers for the birth of new relationships and connections. Offering prayers for Dee as she goes through cancer treatments. May the medicine be strong and the cancer cells continue to weaken. Prayers for those test results. May they be boring or present something easeful to deal with. Prayers for me who decided with my doctor today to try a radically new approach to my chronic illness. May the medicine bring with it what is hoped for, and may side effects be minimal. Offering prayers to heal the chronic inflammation in my shoulder and its underlying causes. Offering prayers, may I have the courage to see that the darkness and accept what it is. May all beings in all timelines be free from suffering. Offering prayers for me and all my black and female ancestors who have been holding it together despite centuries of systemic oppression and violence. May we continue the work of healing and living free. Offering prayers for me that I heal from the pain in my body that I am carrying now. Offering prayers for activists and organizers who are learning new ways to connect and act. Offering prayers for physical healing and spiritual protection for D. May all members of our team have guidance for this transition. Offering prayers for healing and peace to A. May love and peace be bestowed upon E, C, M, A, and Z. Prayers for Michelle that she finds ways to relieve her suffering and pain. Prayers for Nancy for an easeful move after 60 years in her home. Offering prayers for me and my colleagues and students. May we accept and embrace good enough. May we see beyond confusion and exhaustion. May we simply be. Offering prayers for all people in Cherokee land, Western North Carolina, and beyond to continue to recover and love each other past Hurricane Helene. Prayers for me for full and robust recovery from hip surgery. Prayers for everyone here to continue to practice with the benefit of ourselves and others to get free. Offering prayers that I receive the love I have always longed for. Prayers for divine love. Offering prayers for sadness and fear. May it be transmuted as I continue to commit to freedom. Prayers for my freedom. May I be free. Prayers for my healing from a stem cell transplant. Prayers for M and R to experience healing and freedom. Prayers of gratitude and protection to all activists working for liberation. Prayers for my paperwork to move smoothly through the system, enabling an extra layer of practical protection in this moment. Offering prayers for my body and healing, and prayers for the caregiver. Offering prayers that I'm able to stay true to myself, my values, and to my child during this difficult time in my life. Prayers that I'm able to bear the deep grief I am experiencing without losing myself to despair, addiction, and codependency. Prayers for help with fear and anxiety that the neuropathy in my feet and legs is intensifying. Prayers to take better care of myself instead of responding to all the requests from others and just doing too much altogether, which ultimately is harmful for circulation in my nervous system, making neuropathy worse. Prayers for help with my fear in general and for keeping the faith in prayer and practice. Prayers for relief of grief and old traumas that resurfaces every year at this time of the anniversary of my brother's death. Prayers that I may shed my unhelpful fixations and that my eyes and ears open up to clarity my benevolent guides are trying to offer me, such that I can contribute to the liberatory work in this life. Prayers for the ancestors' forgiveness and grace for any disrespect of their wishes or honor which I may have engaged in. Prayer that we may all be free of our suffering to come to our work and our joy. Offering prayers for C and his family, M and C, as he begins chemo for a blood cancer. Prayers for the young men, M, J, JMP, B. May they find some clarity and ease and new possibilities as they find ways of working with their ADHD and autism. May they find more kindness for their interactions with their mothers. We continue to offer prayers for all those who are experiencing sickness, who are in the process of transitioning. Offer deep prayers for Jaling, for Spring, for Sana, for everyone recovering from devastating illness. We continue to pray for the complete alleviation, abolishment of all systems of harm, for the complete eradication of fascism and all violence facing us. May we bring about the liberated future that we have been so working for so long. May we all get free as quickly as possible. And just returning back to our mantra just for just a few minutes. And releasing, as we go back to the mantra, releasing the worry, the hope, and the fear that we have around what we're praying for. Releasing this into the presence of all our gathered benefactors. Letting the fear be released, letting whatever fear remains be offered to the care of the Buddhas. May we be in this moment being held by the seed, by the land. And may we keep remembering that we are unlimited. Just like the Buddhists, we are unlimited. May we become the medicine. O te anda begenze, begenze ma begenze razu sumunga te soa. Te anda begenze, begenze ma begenze. Razu sumunga te soa, te anda begenze, begenze, ma begenze, razu sumunga te soa, te anda begenze, begenze, ma begenze, razu sumunga te soa, te anda ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de zoa te anda begenze begenze ma begenze razu sumunga de I invite you to inhale deeply into your heart center. Once you've inhaled fully, holding the breath for just a couple of seconds, 2 seconds. After 2 seconds, releasing from the heart center, just moving energy, circulating anything that feels stuck. And do this 2 more times, breathing, inhaling into the heart center, holding, releasing. One more time. Connecting to the seats. Again, the weight of your body. Grounding. And when you're ready, offering deep appreciation to all the benefactors who have been holding you in this practice. And we pray to our benefactors, ask our benefactors that they stay close to us as guides and as guardians as we continue moving forward. We release whatever fear that seems to be clinging to us, to the care of our benefactors. Returning our attention to Medicine Buddha, how Medicine Buddha has arisen wherever fear is arising. Imagining that Medicine Buddha begins to dissolve into white light, along with the energy of that fear, all dissolving together. And how that white light, now the expression of wisdom itself, is absorbed right into your heart center. Knowing that whenever we're struggling with fear, we know that Medicine Buddha and all of our benefactors are right here ready to hold us. Again, coming back to the seat, the weight of your body, this time beginning to offer slow, simple, awakening movement to your bodies. When you're ready, we will shift our attention to Shantideva's prayer in the chat, which we'll recite 3 times. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as the earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as the earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. Okay, thank you all so much. So we just have like 15 minutes left, and so I just want to open questions. You can put questions in the chat as well. You don't have to come on and unmute yourself. If you do come on and unmute yourself, I just encourage people who haven't ever asked a question, who only come to Medicine Buddha. Not for those of you who see me everywhere, who stalk me all over the world in every retreat, you know. But for the folks, maybe this is like their only thing that you do is Medicine Buddha.
I didn't have a question tonight.
Unless you miss Sharon Hill.
But anyone can put a question in the chat, though. All right. I think I remember Angel was asking in the chat earlier, what's my favorite musical to just to get us started. I would say ultimately that would be Rent, because Rent came out when I was in high school. I was president of the chorus because I was that kind of gay, right? I was in charge of shit. I'm not saying I had the best voice. I'm not saying that like I was talented like that. I went to high school and college with extremely talented artists and musicians. I wasn't that, you know, but I could win an election.
It's a great question.
But anyway, Rent was that musical, the original, because it was the first musical that like actually gave me a vision of the way I wanted my life to be, and I did that. And I that was the life that I wanted. I wanted to be in the world. I wanted to be doing, like important shit. I wanted to like be taking risks, and all of that, and that's what happened. And it really, in a way, saved my life because it gave me a life. It gave me something to aspire for. Yeah. So let's see.
Shall we take this question in the chat that came in first?
Yeah, which one? I'm seeing a bunch.
Will you talk about the difference between discipline and
Oh,
obsession in practice?
well, it's fixation is the difference. you know, like obsession, if you're talking about just practice context, obsession is like fixation. And that fixation is fear. It's a fear based relationship to practice. You're grasping onto it, right? And practice has to be something that is allowed space. So discipline is the recognition that this thing will help me get free. There's a natural appreciation for practice and discipline. But discipline is something that should just become natural, something that becomes deeply internalized. So it's just something, practice is something that should just happen without thinking about it. It's just like, I'm just going to practice. There's no debate about this. Okay. what's next?
Hi, Emily. And then we'll just bounce back between
Okay.
hands and chat.
Cool. Thank you. Hi, Lama Rod.
Hey.
Um, I was just wondering if you could share a little bit more about what you said earlier around like the really public choices
Yeah.
and I'd love to hear you say more about like the personal and private choices to get free and what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I think the public choices have to be preceded by a private choice. Like we see the public choices, we see people making choices to disrupt, to say no, to stand up, to fight. Like that's seen, but there has to be another choice before that. Like I don't think that just happens on the spot. You have to have already made a choice to get free before that public display happens, right? And when I talk about the private, I'm talking about in this moment when we're with ourselves, like with our minds, with everything that's arising. Am I in this moment making this choice first and foremost for myself to get free? Do I deserve to get free? Do I believe that? Because if I don't believe that, any other public kind of choice or public action around liberation will be performative, right? And I think that's why some of us get so disappointed, sometimes with like people we've considered like, whatever, change makers, because I think sometimes it's like they get kind of wrapped up in these public expressions of freedom, but they haven't done that for themselves. And if you haven't done it for yourself, then you're going to be limited in how much you're going to be working towards freedom and liberation, right? There will be a limit to how far you go, right? Um, and this is a choice that you're making with the support of elders and communities and teachers and mentors and so forth, everything that I talk about all the time. Um, I have to see freedom as something, yeah, that I deserve. Yeah, I mean, I think you get it, but um, sometimes we have to, and this is also tricky. Sometimes we have to be careful around how we're mm, attached to just one way liberation looks, you know, because there are all kinds of ways to be practicing freedom that may not look like something familiar to you, but you can feel people practicing freedom, you can feel it as well. Okay, we'll continue.
Thank you, Emily. Um, Sort of constellation in the chat. Any wisdom about forgiveness when experiencing trauma or tips on channeling ancestors? And then a yes, please. I have a hard time coming up with benefactors for my circle.
Mhm. Well, for the last question there, I just think that, like, don't try so hard with calling in benefactors, right? I think sometimes when we're like having a hard time, sometimes I think we're trying to force an experience to happen. And I've learned like that can be an impediment to our practice. Like whatever happens, happens, right? What we have to do, and this is the same thing I had to do, right, was to trust that when I am saying, when I am like calling these beings here, they're here. But really, the truth is they're always present as well. Like you're not calling them from anywhere they're not already present in, and too. So the practice is for us to formally acknowledge that we're held and we're being guided, right? And it may take time for you to experience, to have this felt experience of benefactors around you, but continue to do so. Continue to do the practice, right? And that's the hard part of the practice is that you will be in very long periods and stretches where you just don't think anything is happening. And that's when you have to like stay with it because something is happening, right? We're just not aware of it, but there is something happening, right? Okay, we'll continue.
How do we change the inclination of our minds to move from overwhelming sadness to something more akin to freedom?
Well, you need to start doing something that's joyful. You know, like when you can't sit and just imagine it, go out and do it. Right? Bring it about. Right? You know, we have to be actively engaged in joy. And that means that we have to stay connected to the things that are sources of joy for us. Right? So when I feel overwhelmed, I get out and I do something. Like I find myself with people, I find myself with beloveds in community. Like I do something that sparks joy for me, and that awakens a larger experience that I just return back to. And at the same time, we also have to maintain space, allow space for the sadness itself, right? You know, um, when the sadness feels like it is consuming us, then that's a sign that we have to offer something back to sadness. And this is like a really a practice that I've often taught too, which is that like I ask my sadness or my grief what it needs, and I just imagine offering what it needs. Like instead of like running away from it, instead of feeling like it's just this burden, this obstacle, I just turn around and I say, "What do you want?" You know, like I'm tired of trying to like hide from you. What do you want? What do you need? Right? And what can I offer you? And then just let the practice naturally build from that. You know, just you're naturally beginning to offer, pour something into this experience of sadness or grief, right? Which is really actually quite powerful to do. Oh, then what is the other question? The ancestors and the trauma.
Yes. Those three were kind of lumped together in the same portion.
So with the trauma, when we're experiencing trauma in practice, I think is really important for us to first understand that we're not the only person experiencing this. Like trauma is a common, very human experience, right? And that we all are struggling to tend to that trauma. And then as we do in our trauma work, we offer trauma space, we offer our just like whatever regulating practices that we have, we can move through that. But for me, it's just, in the past, working with my trauma, it's just this allowance. There you are. And here's the space for you to be here, right? I'm no longer, this is a hard practice. When you say I'm no longer trying to get rid of you, right? That's the surrender. That's the surrender piece, too. It's just like, I am tired of doing all this shit. Like all this erasing, hiding everything. What do you want? Right? That question actually opens up a lot of space for experiences to be there. Right? And that trauma is just an experience. It is not who or what I am. And for the ancestors, what was that? How do I channel ancestors? That was the question.
Any advice on channeling ancestors?
Um, just talking to them. Just talk to the ancestors. Like just start a conversation, start talking and allowing ancestors to show you how they're communicating with you. Right? That's the best way to start. The pith answer is that. Start talking to your ancestors, and then that begins to strengthen this kind of like line of communication. And just notice anything that happens when you're talking to the ancestors, like sensations, feelings, thoughts, impressions, whatever, everything that arises, like could possibly be the ways that ancestors have been always trying to communicate with us, Okay.
Thank you so much for all of your questions. And I will access all of the questions because we have the benefit of the recording, and we'll compile them for to have so that we can revisit them at a future date.
Yeah.
So I'm not getting lost because there's lots of really amazing questions in the chat.
Yeah. We'll try to get more, even if it's just like answering one or two. Like we'll try to get through them as well by the end of the year, which is quickly approaching. Okay. I think that's it for me.
Is there anything you'd like to say to close out? Any dedication of merit?
Um, we dedicated the merit. Um, yeah. There is something that I want to say. I don't know what it is, but it's gonna come in just a second. um, yeah. I guess just saying that, and this is advice that I know I've shared this story before, but this is advice that was offered to me in my some of my most intense moments in life. And this advice is that it's okay to have fun. Like I think it's imperative right now to choose something that awakens joy for us because this density is no joke. Like the depth of this will take you down very quickly, right? And so let's be smart about this. Like let's just like none of this makes sense. So your response to this doesn't have to make sense either. Don't try to meet samsara with logic because samsara is not a logical system. Like you're trying to figure this shit out way too much and it takes up energy and it's distracting. This is why we keep saying, what else? Like you're trying to fix shit, but what else? Right? You know, it's like my dad would always say, like my dad is like, you know, he always had these like really pith instructions that like really like isn't meaningful for anyone else except for me, I guess. you know. But he would always talk about cars. I come from people who are obsessed with cars for some reason. Not obsessed, but like really concerned, right, with vehicles. And my dad would always, growing up, he always had this economic advice about stuff, you know, but he was like, well, you know, when you're always having to fix a car, then maybe you should get rid of the car. you know, you know, and somehow that has really stuck with me for all these years for some reason. But it's just in this moment, it's just like if you're always having to fix something over and over again, maybe you should just get rid of it, right? Including relationships, right? Like maybe that's just not where you need to be right now, right? And this is why we have to choose to dream something differently and start working towards that dream. Like this, the ship is sinking, right? You can spend your time trying to figure out where the hole is, or you can get on the lifeboat and get somewhere else, right? This is such an incredible, powerful, poignant moment in history that feels like intense suffering for many of us. And guess what? This is it. Like, you've been dreaming liberation, here it is. So, are you going to choose it? Because it doesn't get easier. You know, it doesn't get easier. So, this is what you've been presented. Like any great change maker we've been talking about, who found themselves in that moment in their life where they were like, am I going to speak? Am I going to act up? Am I going to like, what am I going to do? not knowing that like maybe they were going to start a movement or whatever, they were going to change the world, right? We don't know that. But what we do know is that we are being presented with a choice, and it's time to choose what you are always dreaming about. You have to make that dream a reality now. And in making that dream a reality, something will die. Right? And are you ready for that to die? Right? You don't have to be ready either. Listen, I don't even think about this shit anymore. I just keep saying yes. Right? I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Everything, yes, yes, yes. Let's do it. Let's get out of here. I'm convinced. I'm 100% on board. Let's do it. Right? And then for all of you, and this is the last thing I'll say because I know we're 5 minutes over. Um,
Golden Girls are calling.
I know it's just as like the old Matrix days when I was just like I just couldn't let go of the Matrix. um, but no, yeah, I don't know what I was gonna say, but I guess that's it. That's the natural end.
Spa,
It
spa.
slipped right out of my mind.
Oh, well, thank you all so much for your practice. Thank you so much for your generous, generous teaching this evening, Lama Rod. Thank you all. I dropped the quick links document if you have any questions. If this has been nourishing and you have fluid assets, fluid resources to give to help stock the pantry to keep going, please feel free to do so. Speaking on behalf of the team, vow to use those resources to the best of our ability in this expression that we have to help. And thank you all for your presence. And we will be here again, same time next week. Thank you for everything. May you all be protected. May the healing be swift and thorough. And we'll see you when we see you.
Until we meet again.